Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show.
So this way we can look at each other, but it's just not.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest. I'm joined by my colleague, Satoko Odagawa. I was really practiced. And we're good coworkers. We're good friends. And she's had such a unique journey to the States and obviously in her career to be my coworker. And so I thought, wow, I'll finally get her on the podcast. I probably bothered her about a solid year. I would go on record and say about a year if I go back to my old correspondence. But we finally did it. It took a global pandemic to finally get her on my show, but I got her here. Now, before we go into the episode and talking about her journey as someone that was born abroad and came to the States, Satoko, give the listeners a brief intro about yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon or good morning or wherever you are in the world. My name is Satoko Odagawa, and I work with Phil, as he introduced. Phil, I'm so glad that you added a good friend in there, because I see that's how you introduce other guests, and I was like, I'm just a colleague, fine, or coworker. So the secondary introduction, I'm glad you are my friend too, just like I think you are my good friend. Anyway, so Phil and I work together. We actually got hired exactly at the same time. So we have that bond going on in our office, Career Services at George Mason. Let's see, quick professional introduction. I'm one of the industry advisors, just like Phil, in University Career Services at Mason, but we manage different industries. So I'm in charge of the education, nonprofit, and human services industries, such as social work and mental health field. But sometimes a lot of our Phil and my industries overlap, such as performing arts organization that is a nonprofit. So I've enjoyed working with Phil ever since we kind of got in it together at the same time, and that has been an interesting career journey for both of us. So that's the professional introduction, but I think today's topic will probably, I get to talk about my more personal background and things like that. So, yeah.
And so, we're going to jump right into it. So if you could guess, and you're good with names, Satoko is from the great land of Japan. And so, I don't know, I felt like saying great land of Japan. And so she had quite a journey, shout out to, and so just kind of going back, when you were growing up, did you ever picture yourself living abroad, like living overseas?
Yeah, so it's always been kind of my dream. So I think every child is different, and I don't know what it was, but I don't know if it's innate, but my family, fortunately, has been very globally minded. My father's career, my mom used to work for Japanese Airlines, so she traveled a lot, before having children, so all her stories. And then, I don't know, I think I'm fascinated with the unknown or places I have never been to, different cultures, different peoples. I've always been interested in that. And my first grade and second grade best friend in Japan, I had not left the country around that time. Like I never traveled to that point overseas in first or second grade, but my best friend in first and second grade, her aunt lived in the US, in California, I believe. And so she would tell stories of her aunt, and she visited her one summer when she was in like second grade, and she brought back all these fascinating stories about the US. And then because of my father's international work, mainly focused on other countries in Asia, but he's retired now, but he spent almost 40 years of his life, one career, a journalist for Asahi newspaper in Japan, one of the leading newspapers in Japan, and his specialty was South Korea and Korea-Japan relations and South Korea-North Korea relations. So in third grade, that brought my whole family to Seoul, Korea, to live in Korea for over 4 years. So, and I was like, oh, great, like Korea, America, like, oh, it's foreign country anyway. I was so excited, So yeah, whatever it was, you know, I think my family, my parents' stories, you know, from young age, you know, I was really interested in, you know, foreign countries and cultures and people and, you know, all that.
So did you, and we're gonna jump. I know Sadako's story, so I'll be jumping like some of these questions. You're like, oh, I already know. But did you, before you went to college, which you went to college in the United States, did you get a chance to go to the United States before and see the country before you went to JMU? Shout out.
Yeah, so that's like interesting story too. So basically, and I know this maybe is a different question you were gonna ask, Phil, but when, you know, I just told you guys that I lived in Seoul, Korea because of my father's job between 3rd grade and 7th grade, so about 4.5 years. But the last 2 years, the last 2.5 years of that, I transferred from Japanese school in Seoul to the international school in Seoul. And that international school, Seoul International School, was based on American education system, U.S. education system, not Canadian, not British. So I think that's where my, again, fascination and like just, you know, like interest in U.S. culture really developed there too. But a lot of students were Americans or U.S. citizens, at least in that international school, among, you know, kids from all countries, diplomats' children, all that, expats' children, all that. But I had, you know, I did not have a chance to visit the U.S. My brother, who was studying English earlier than me, my older brother, he was lucky, and in middle school, he got to go to Utah for like a whole summer, 2 months or something, to do an exchange host family program. So of course he came back goo goo gaga about the U.S. and he was like in love with U.S. and how fun it was, and you know they had a huge trampoline in their yard and ate cereal every morning and all these like fascinating things that you can't do in Japan. Well, you can eat cereal in Japan now, but you know, like how huge the cereal boxes are compared to Japan and things like that. So just like my fascination, fascination and just kind of like, yeah, I guess fascination is the best word to use. Grew and grew. But the first time I ever visited US finally, other than, you know, being in that international school and very like exposed to American culture, American music and American pop culture a little bit and things like that, but I was still in Seoul, Korea. So in high school, I attended public high school in Tokyo, but it was a very like a magnet school for international education and foreign languages. So, you know, I was definitely fortunate to be able to be there because I felt like right at place in that high school. But one of the families of student, a girl 1 grade above me, they used to live in Oregon for a really long time for the father's job, and they started like their own exchange program for spring break, winter break, and summer break. So one winter break, finally in my 2nd year of high school, I got to do that for 2 weeks and came to Oregon for 2 weeks and stayed with in super rural Oregon, actually. A village. I would call it a village of I think 350 people, something like that in rural Oregon. But it was such the nicest family, like great family. They had 8 kids. It was like, you know, like quintessential like America to me, and it was so much fun. And but as a group, the Japanese students and the leaders, we also like, you know, did like 1 night in Portland, did sightseeing, 2 nights in Portland, I think. So just like, you know, that was my first, just 2 weeks in Oregon. That was my first experience coming to the US finally in high school. But that really like solidified my like interest and love for you know, US cultures, and I was just like, you know, I definitely want to, you know, come to the US for college. So I kind of started thinking in that direction instead of, you know, researching Japanese universities in Japan.
So you had your mindset by the time, jumping forward, when you saw that you were going to, like, I'm determined to go to US for college, right? And I guess, I don't know if you had the guidance counselor, you know how we used to, we're older. So I remember looking at books, like the little, like, here are the books of the school, and I went to Virginia.
And then Phil is like younger than me, so.
So did you like, how did you, like, of all the books, when you're looking at US universities, did you scroll and say Virginia? Like, how did you, like, legit of all the colleges in the United States,
Yeah.
from your experience, how'd you pick JMU?
It's like Phil asked the best questions. I didn't put these questions in his mouth, by the way. Like he emailed me like, this is what I'm thinking. I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Like, you know, that's exactly probably what like listeners would be the most curious about. So like kudos to Phil, you know, he's such a podcaster, knows all these things intuitively. But so after Oregon, I went back to Japan, you know, and then I started thinking, okay, I'm gonna, you know, apply to US colleges instead. Fortunately, because it was a magnet school and had a lot of returnee students from foreign countries. So basically Japanese students who, similar to my situation, because of parents' jobs, lived overseas and came back to Japan. But their English, you know, in terms of English language, their level was really good. So we're like in the returnees English class, like higher than the highest of the Japanese, among the Japanese students. And then it was kind of designed to, for students who wanted to apply to colleges overseas. So we studied SAT book, we studied the TOEFL book, things like that. So I decided to be in that track. And then in terms of choosing schools, like I said, Oregon was the only place. 2 weeks in Oregon was my
that's America.
So this was like so random. I across the street from my high school happened to be a library, I guess English library, because it was a dorm of foreign college students studying in Japanese universities, and they had a resource room for like Japanese students who wanted to study abroad. So they had the newest edition of like, you know, US news and reports and things like that.
I remember that book.
So I used that one book. So I went to that library and then another one downtown in Tokyo and just used that, like, you know, this was like back in 98, 99. So like that edition, and I just flipped through the book. I knew that just because I'd been to Oregon, and then my host family was like, come to University of Oregon in Eugene, we're close, you know, and then you can you know, stay here for Thanksgiving and Christmas and things like that. So I definitely applied for University of Oregon Eugene. So I did that, but again, I think it's my fascination with the unknown, the places I've never been to, and that like a little bit of a challenge and adventurousness in me. I decided to just like instead of just University of Oregon Eugene, which was like a safe feeling to me, you know, because I've been to Oregon, I have my host family right near there. I decided to apply to 12 schools across the U.S. everywhere in the U.S.
Yeah, you did more than me. Hey, did you do it? Did you do it like based on like how you typically tell a kid like safety school, hard school, or whatever?
Yeah.
Or you just like, yo, just 12? Did you throw a dart? Like, how'd you pick these 12 schools? Like, what was you? Did you go by the subject?
University of Oregon and JMU, and then other than those two, and then at the very end, I decided. This is so funny. I say at the very end because UCLA and all this like UC system is like it's not a safety net school at all.
Hard.
Obviously, I didn't get into many of them because at the last minute I decided that, hey, why don't I challenge myself? But out of all the schools I applied, the UC system were the only school system that required SAT scores for international students at that time. And all the others, it was either optional or only required TOEFL. So I really like aced the TOEFL. I took all these like secret, you know, secret courses to ace the TOEFL type of thing in Tokyo. And I did really well on TOEFL, but I didn't really, you know, study for SAT. So didn't really quite do well on SATs. It's harder too for a foreign student, obviously. So I did not get into UC whatever that I I applied to. Got into Cal State, a few of the Cal State, but those are like kind of like more last minute edition. And also talking to like other upperclassmen in my magnet high school, like where they have applied to, where they've been, that kind of stuff. A lot of them used to live in US as a child, so most of them really like, unlike me, who was like, oh, well, Oregon feels safe, but I want to go to East Coast instead because I've never been there. You know, a lot of them like went back to where they used to live as a child, kind of thing. So you know, I applied to so basically I applied to like random 12 schools, and
Random
at the
12,
last
okay.
minute, this is really funny, JMU was also a last minute addition for me. Because like living in Tokyo, you never hear about James Madison.
No, I don't think
Like,
so.
like
I really,
at least like
I
North Carolina State,
yeah,
NC State, it's in North Carolina, like
right.
it's intuitive.
Yeah,
James Madison University, like where is that?
exactly.
And you, Phil, I don't know if I told you this, and you're gonna laugh so much, but my classmate, so my year, she's a really smart girl. In my high school, she got chosen to do this like exchange her senior year in high school. We were in the same high school. She got chosen to do this like exchange program in Princeton, New Jersey, the Princeton University, for foreign students to live in the dorms for one summer, that kind of stuff. And then so coincidentally, when she came, so one of her camp counselors were from JMU that summer. He went to JMU, and he was like doing this as a summer job kind of thing, doing this like summer school counselor in New Jersey, Princeton. So she came back, and then I have never heard of JMU, and she thought she might be applying to US colleges too. She decided not to, but she told me like, oh yeah, da 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 da. So you're applying to US colleges? Oh yeah, one of my camp counselors this summer in Princeton was from this university called James Madison in Virginia, and he said the campus food is really good.
Yo, it is. Hey, and I know, it got ranked like number 11. So literally, it was off the word of one of your friends that said, yo, just word on the street that they got good food. And you're like, done deal. I'm gonna add that.
Yeah, so that was a huge factor. I know this is so funny. Yeah. So that's how I heard and even got to know about the name James Madison, JMU. So then I go across the street to look at the book again. Yeah. And then what I skipped earlier, I look at J, and there it is. One of the, the top 100 or how many ever that book has. JMU was in there. So I start reading about it, and I was like, oh, that sounds good. Oh, this sounds really good. I feel like, I might fit in here. Like, so at least I got to know the name James Madison that way. But then I started doing research too. And then I got really interested in it. Of course, I'm sure the campus food was like a big factor too.
No, it was. I mean, I think it for real legit got ranked like number 11th in the country or something
really
like that.
Good. Yeah, even back then when Phil and I went, and again, I went a few years earlier than Phil, but like
RIP D-Hall is no longer there.
D-Hall, yeah.
So jumping forward, you fly over, you literally are there. Like you step foot and you're on the quad, or you see the little statue. Like, what was your first thoughts? Like, wow, I'm going to be here for 4 years, or 5 years, whatever you thought when you're going to graduate. But like, what was that feeling like to start like really your experience in a new country? Like, I'm going to be here for more than that with that 2-week program. I'm here for a significant amount of time. What was that feeling like?
So, definitely arriving in the US alone, and remember, like my only experience in the US was Oregon for 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
and I didn't know anyone other than the host family in the US at the time. So no one on the East Coast, obviously. And then I did contact the international students office, like OIPS here. I did contact them before, once I applied, and then out of all these schools, quickly going back, my mom and I did travel to the US in June of that year before that fall start.
Yeah.
And we got
That's a good idea.
Super. I know, sorry, my stories are always so long, but
no, it's good. I'm glad that you actually checked out the school, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah. I'm not that adventurous. Applied to 12 schools, got into 7 schools, including JMU. And then out of the 7, I picked my top 4 interests. Mm-hmm. And then back then, so this was June of 99, because June is not a travel season in Japan, so the ticket was super cheap. And we found this like super deal ticket from a travel agency near my town in Tokyo. You get to fly from Japan to one city in US and go to 3 other cities and then come back to Japan. And the flight was like $700, like less than $700 per person. So my mom and I decided to do that, and 1 or 2 nights each in each college town, just like visited each school. And this was June, so like it was empty. Maybe some students taking summer courses, offices were open, but limited kind of thing. And then out of that, like JMU just like gave me the best impression. So rural, so different from Tokyo, but
it's pretty. It was very pretty, and it still is
very beautiful campus, very beautiful, and like one student held the door for us.
That's it. Yes, that's it. You're like that's like my mother-in-law. Like I swear to God, first impressions, everything. Like if one person was nice to her, she's like, "These are the most wonderful people." I'm like, your sample size. Your sample size was one person. One person cannot be the vibe, but then you're like, oh, they're so friendly there.
They're so friendly, yeah. So we stayed at the Days Inn right next to JMU campus on the business school side, on the mountain side, and the hotel people are super friendly. One guest had like a big German shepherd. We love dogs. We're like, oh, in the US, like dogs get to stay at a hotel. Wow, so like every little piece of like good impression. Yeah. And then on campus, somebody held the door. Like this, like one like male student held the door for us, and I was like, oh wow, he's so nice. Like my mom's like, he's really nice. So like small things add up, and of course, one of my favorite colors is purple, so it did not hurt that it was purple and gold, versus like Oregon was green and yellow. That kind of like small impressions. But as excited as I was, Phil, like you're a Christian, as it got closer to leaving Japan, so like I had just turned 19 at that point, and I've never left home then like more than a few weeks or summer camp or something like that. So not even a few weeks, few nights, 1 week, 2 weeks. So I lived at home, obviously. And as much as I was so excited to come to the US for college, as it got closer and closer, I remember the last night before my flight, my mom took me shopping. She was like, anything last minute you need to get, to pack up. And my suitcase was mostly packed, and she took me out shopping, and I was like almost in tears. Like she walked in front of me. It was like super busy Tokyo city lights, nightlife, and I was like walking like few feet behind her because I was like starting to get teary because I was so like worried and sad, that I'm like leaving my family and this is unknown adventure and all my friends in Tokyo, the comfort of home, but by the time I got on that flight the next morning or next day, I was already like excitement took over more than the sadness already. But arriving at JMU, definitely, fortunately, I contacted the International Students Office in advance, and since only like out of the entire campus, there were like 4 Japanese students at the time.
Wow, okay.
But still 4, right? So
I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised there's actually 4 at JMU. No, right? That's interesting.
Yeah, just 4, but there were 4. This is back then. This is back in '99.
Yeah, so that is remarkable.
Yeah, exactly. And so they were quickly able to check with all those 4 Japanese students if I can have their contact info, and all of them said sure, like we can help, But it's such a huge campus and only 4 students, so it wasn't like a Japanese students club or anything like that. They were just living their own lives, but they kind of know each other, but they don't really form a club or something. So one woman, I'm still friends with her actually. Now she lives in Ashburn with 2 kids. She's married and all that, but I don't get to talk to her or hang out with her as much anymore. But she wasn't married yet. Her husband, now they were dating and they were living in Harrisonburg, and she was attending JMU. And when I contacted her, she was like, hey, like it's so far, it's so, it's so different, why don't you come a week early and stay with us? Awesome, and I can take you shopping and get stuff for your dorm and stuff, So that was like so helpful. And, thanks to her, I had that 1 week to kind of adjust to the time zone. She took me, they had a car, so they took me to Walmart, Costco, just kind of like adjust to Harrisonburg. It helped me move into the dorm. It was the village, so it was Dingodine. One of those suites. So that helped, but still, Dingodine, the village, it's all super American,
Yeah.
super freshmen,
Yeah.
super Virginians, in-state students
Yeah.
mostly,
Mostly.
so it was like such a
Culture shock, I would say.
culture shock. Yeah. Not many international students at all at JMU. Probably it was like 1% or 2%.
Yeah. I was about to
Not
say
even.
so for even just for Japanese, but just in general, international students was low.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so I know you're an outgoing person, you're a talker,
Mhm.
but I don't know if that was your 19-year-old self, right? But how did you overtly get to be a part of the community? How did you, and I'll let you, I know your story, so I'm not going to like prod and say, I know you joined organizations, but I do know you did. So how did you get involved in the community to just kind of have friends and have a experience there as an international student?
So like I said, so my freshman year was in the village. It was the freshman section. If anybody went to JMU, they've heard of the village, which is the freshman dorm clusters. It wasn't like a designated international interest or anything like that. So it was mostly really like just American, mostly Virginia in-state students who just graduated high school. So their world is like, their world is some were interested in like foreign cultures and things like that, but their majority of the interest is like them and here and now and party and JMU and most freshman students who's 18, to be honest. So it wasn't that easy to connect with friends in my dorm. Actually, it was my roommate was nice, but it wasn't like super strong connection instantaneously or anything like that. Although like that Thanksgiving, she ended up inviting me to her home, and went to Thanksgiving together back home to I think it was like Southern Virginia, Yorktown or something like that. So that was nice. But my initial friendship was, I did find like so there was one other Japanese student who started as freshman from Tokyo with me, and that was like such a coincidence, right? So we kind of hung out together, but her dorm was Eagle, I guess, the smoke-free dorm, and I don't know, I should have chosen smoke-free. I don't know why I didn't, but her dorm, she just found some like nice niche of American students who are like super nice, and so I started hanging out with them a little bit. Like freshman year, it's really a blur. Like how like who did I get closest to?
But I know your journey that you actually joined a sorority and you actually did stuff like that. How did you like get outside your comfort zone and join like predominantly white or like say like you're right, like there wasn't a Japanese student alliance or Asian student alliance or whatever it was. So how did you like get outside yourself to join other organizations?
Right.
Just
So
to
I
do
think,
that.
And kind of like fast forward just a bit, my senior, I'll talk about it later, but, in my senior year, I did end up becoming really close to and actually serving on the board for leadership team for the International Student Association at JMU. So that ultimately, by third or fourth year, that ultimately became more of my niche and really where I felt comfortable. Other international students, not necessarily Asian, not necessarily Japanese, but like international students of all paths and all cultures, because there was Asian Student Union back then, at JMU. Even from my freshman year, I think there was Asian Student Union. And this is like another interesting conversation, but I didn't feel as comfortable with them either because they were Asian Americans. So now I think I will feel really comfortable joining more Asian American things. I've been here 21 years at this point. Okay, telling my age, but but back then, the Asian Student Unions was like very Americanized Asian students. Obviously, most of them were born here, brought up here, so it wasn't quite, just because I'm Asian, I didn't feel like I necessarily belonging culturally, but my freshman year and my sophomore year, I think I was still in the mindset of like, the more different than me, the more interesting it is. So I was in that mindset of like curiosity, just like challenge, sense of adventure. So as much as I wanted comfort, that fascination of U.S. culture and that fascination to foreign culture and and foreignness of things was still dominant in me. So so like Phil said, on my sophomore year, just because few people in my dorm were doing it and I heard about it, I decided to rush for sorority, social sorority.
Yeah.
And you know, rush was fun because obviously, like most sororities, have never seen an international student do it. They had some Asian students, not many, because even Asian population was like 3%, you know, then back at JMU. So not many Asian students, period. But they've never, like, I think all of them told me, like, oh, like I've never, you know, met an international student, or this is the
you're my
first
first Japanese person too, right? Like they never met.
Yeah, they've never met a Japanese person, or so. Like Rush was fun because so basically like every I don't even remember the language anymore. Every place I chose, I got accepted. Like as in the sense that like everybody wanted me to join, kind of thing. So Rush was fun and kind of exciting. Rushing was, you know, exciting and kind of fun. And they were like, oh, we want you, we want you, we want you, we want you. You know, like so it was really.
You get recruited. That felt good. Like.
You know, so like I ultimately like chose ZTA as the sorority, but pledging, on the other hand, that one semester of pledging probably was the hardest, because that pledging semester is like, it's so hard. It's so busy, you know. You're expected to do so much, and there's like almost like a lot of homeworks, you know, meet with so many sisters before this date and have a lunch date, or, you know, and you know what I didn't expect was I should have known this, because, you know, social sororities and fraternities, you know, I guess it's the image, and it is true. Like it ended up costing a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, which I didn't know so much. And you know, it is a certain types of populations, you know. So, you know, I was very fortunate that my parents were paying for my college, tuition, board, food, but I didn't want them to, you know, have to pay for anything more than that, you know, and allowance. And then like, I think like my, kind of like a, like not breaking off point, but like, you know, like, you know, maybe this is not for me, just kind of like throughout pledging. I got in though. I passed through the pledging stage and I got in. And then I think I did one semester more as a sister.
And you're like, I'm good.
And I decided not to do it anymore.
Yeah, there you go.
It's so unusual too, right?
Well, you can wear the pink ribbon and you can say you're Zeta forever though, so it's all good.
Right, exactly. I mean, she was a sister forever. So so technically, you know, although I decided not to be active and do it at JMU anymore, I really did really get along with my big sister. She was one person that I really connected well with. I chose her, she chose me, you know, through the whole like pledging you know, semester, and she was like super open-minded, interested in foreign cultures. And I also did end up going to that Thanksgiving.
You're going to all kinds of Thanksgiving. You're the Thanksgiving person.
All these American experiences.
So at what point during your journey, you know, like you're here, what point you were like, this is where I want to have a career. I want to stay here. I want to pursue, you know, like, I don't want to just get a 4-year degree. I want to get a occupation here. Like, when did it flip where you wanted to get a job here rather than go back home?
Yeah, so that's like interesting question, because, you know, Phil and I are both in career services and we work with international students at Mason too. You know, I used to, Phil knows this, but I've been at Mason for 11 years now. I've been a staff member, you know, admin faculty at Mason for 11 years. And my first close to 9 years, I worked at OIPS as an international student advisor. So, you know, fast forwarding again, you know, because of my experience at JMU as an international student, that became my ultimate goal, to become an international student advisor and help international students with navigate the culture, you know, academics, career, you know, just adjust to the US. So, you know, so my dream had come true, you know, when I was finally able to become an international student advisor here. but I didn't know that right after JMU. I can say that because of my love and fascination for like foreign cultures and like US and US culture, I was one of those international students when I, came here. I knew I wanted to at least stay several years at least after graduation and work in the US, and I said, there's OPT, optional practical training for international students. You can stay and work in your field. So I knew I was going to try that. But within me, as much as I was like, well, at least I want to stay for several years to gain experience, I kind of knew inside that if I can get a green card or if I can get sponsorship by a company, I wanted to stay here longer, potentially maybe semi-permanently, depending on the job and how much I liked it.
I mean, because it might have to shape your focus, right? Like, you come from another country and you're like, I'm the one, and maybe your thoughts is you come to the United States and then use that education and go back home and take it like whatever, like being a doctor, lawyer, whatever, and taking that education back to your native country, and then you use your degree to say, yo, I got a degree in the United States, but use those skills there. But or some people have that laser focus. I feel like, and this is a straight assumption that if you want to stay in the U.S. as an international student, you have to have that kind of laser focus since as a freshman. Like when you hit the ground as a freshman, you have to have in your mind like, I'm doing this and I got to do different things and internships throughout my time because it's like I have to set myself up, like like almost have that laser focus. Like you have that as a goal when you come in, because you can't be like, I don't know, maybe I'll stay in the United States. I feel like it's so hard to stay here that you would have to be like really, really well planned. Like you have to have a plan to do that.
Yeah. So that part, I really should have done a little bit more research as an undergrad student. Now that I'm a, career advisor, like industry advisor, but basically career advisor. If I look back to myself at JMU, I would definitely advise myself, do an internship. Like do an internship, do a part-time job, because of international student status, you have to use curricular practical training. There's all these immigration regulation that kind of limits your work ability, as a college student. But there are types of things that you can do legally, and also, or just volunteer too, I did do some volunteer, but like those are pure volunteer, dog shelter, because I love dogs, pet shelters or animal shelters in Harrisonburg, or the Boys and Girls Club, because, I like children. So those are like really, but, it kind of led to, because I ended up pursuing an education degree at not Mason, JMU. So it was related, but I did not take advantage of CPT. And again, JMU, international office at JMU back then, international student population was so small. They did not promote CPT at all. They did not tell me about it. They only promoted OPT. This was back then. Now they do, now
it's a different, it's growing. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, so I didn't even know there was such a thing as curricular practical training where I can get a paid position as long as it's directly related to my coursework that I'm studying. So I just thought that I cannot do any summer job. I cannot do any paid internship. So that was my understanding. I didn't really do any internship in the field. I had a lot of fun. Like I, ended up like volunteering here and there, or traveling, things like that like I really had a great time. But I wasn't as planned, I wasn't as planned out as I should have been. I think I would have been a little bit more successful in the career search arena if I takes had a while,
because and it's similar to me. I work in career services, and I only went there once to get my resume. It's like hindsight's 20/20, but it's like what we preach about. I think I'm just saying it probably in my understanding, it's an extra layer. Like we tell freshmen, come in and see us, right? Because you need to hit the ground running as a freshman, right? But I feel like international students, you need to also come see us and your office, OIP, because I feel like that 4-year journey, it's like you really want to set yourself up and not be waiting until you're right about to graduate, because that could be, I think, extremely stressful. from
Yeah,
my understanding.
exactly. And with international students, so I was international student status at JMU. There's that extra layer for just searching for a job and internship is harder as it is for U.S. students, American
Yeah,
students. But
yeah,
for international students, there's that extra layer of visa issues.
yeah.
So visa restrictions. So it's even more challenging
Hmm.
and selective for international students. So definitely that, that plan, since I already knew, I wanted to stay after graduation and work in the
Hmm.
US at least for several years, if not longer. I wish, probably if in hindsight, if I can do it again, I would, do internships, I would do a CPT since I didn't even know back then that existed.
Hmm.
All in all, like it turned out fine, but definitely after JMU, it was difficult to find a job for me, and especially the teacher's position, because public schools in general, now they really big public school system, they don't sponsor H-1B work visa, period. But back then, some still did, some are like,
Hmm.
only for really like hard to fill positions.
Hard to teach them. Yeah.
Some were like did it but didn't have a good experience sponsoring with visa and all that, so they decided they were just kind of turning away from that. So in the field of education, it was pretty tough to do the whole sponsorship and stuff like that. Yeah, so there's
So
that.
what? So just from your perspective, like what do you see as like and this is like I said, this is an informal observation. Obviously, we're not
Yeah.
going to be pulling out stats and stuff. But what do you see as like a big difference between higher ed in the U.S. and higher ed in Japan from your
Yeah.
experience here in the U.S. and then maybe talking back home to family members and whatnot?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of the reasons I wanted to come to U.S. college, of course, the fact that my sole international school experience, it was a U.S. education system and a lot of American teachers versus the British school system or Canadian, school system. So that, really kind of turned me towards that direction. But compared to I definitely noticed, and this is true, U.S. college, like American higher education, really focuses on the whole being of the student. So there's like the level of student services and student affairs offices and Japan and also Canada and the UK and Australia, because Australia is like British system. I looked into it a little bit and definitely noticed that it's mostly focused on just academics, not nearly as much focus on student life and every aspect of development of the student development. So US was the only system in higher ed colleges and universities in general that just had so much like student life in the life of a college student. So starting from living on campus, the amount of student organizations, just like level of student affairs types of offices and services there's available. It was like really developing a whole college experience versus getting a degree and going to class, taking classes and getting a degree. And I'm not an expert on this at all about UK and Canada and Australia and New Zealand. I'm just saying those countries because those are the only like English speaking. Ireland, Scotland as well, but I don't think that was as big of a pool for international students to apply to, especially back then. So I definitely wanted that U.S. college experience. so I definitely, after briefly looking into other colleges, I definitely chose U.S. But Japan also, there's not, of course, there's like a lot of student clubs. We call them circles, sakuru, which means circles, but it's like basically like a lab. There's a faculty advisor usually, and then a small or medium group of students that's interested in that topic or interest, and so those exist, but it's mainly it's not as residential. And then the major difference, I would say, major difference between Japanese universities and US is that in Japan still today, when you apply to colleges, you have to pick a major. you have to apply to individual majors. And that's what you get into. You get into the Department of Economics majoring in this, for example. And it's really, even at the undergrad level, it's pretty difficult to change a major once you start it.
It's like pipelines. Like
yeah, it's like pipeline. Yeah, so it's almost kind of like grad school here. Grad school, you know what you want to do. So you apply to grad school. And most people don't like jump to a different program within grad school because it's more focused and specialized. But undergrad, you know, you technically don't have to declare a major until like your sophomore year, second semester, sophomore year. So there's that the freedom and time to take different classes and really explore your interests. And again, like just really focus on a lot of developmental, you know, developing a college student kind of thing. And, you know, when you graduate high school, how many people know for sure that that's what they want to do for the rest of their lives? You know, career. This is the major.
Right. I'm 35. I still don't know what I want to do. So it's all good.
Right. So the fact that I didn't, you know, I kind of had an idea, but I did go into JMU as an undeclared student and didn't really declare my major and minor until like second year, sophomore year. So that worked out great. So that aspect definitely is a major difference from Japan to the US and what I think is like so unique and valuable in US education system.
Well, we just tipped the iceberg, but I feel like I gotta have you on like another episode because I feel like I had all these questions about post life and we only made it through like to JMU. So we got to do a part 2, but we're at the part of the show. It's called Shot for Shot. You get to ask me any random question and I have to answer it, and I ask you one. Do you want to go first or I go first?
Yeah, go. But you didn't tell me this is part of the show, so now I'm thinking what kind of question I should ask you.
I want to at least have one surprise. You made me write a list of questions. All right, so and it's already on here. So, in general, how do you stay connected to your Japanese heritage, being here in the United States?
Yeah. So you know, so my side of the family, like my family, are all still back in Tokyo. My sister, younger sister, and older brother, both of them, you know, did travel a lot and lived in foreign countries here and there. Whether it's for education or work, you know, so they lived in the U.S. or other countries too, but it was all short term. My brother got his master's, but it was like accelerated master's. He was in Boston for 1 year after he got married, after he had his daughter. But you know, since then he went back to Tokyo again. So I'm the only one who stayed here after undergrad level, and then it's been like 20 years or so. So they're all not currently back in Tokyo, and I do miss them. You know, I really feel like at this point I'm like not, I don't want to sound like it's like a bragging word, but like I really feel like I'm very close to like bicultural, bilingual. So I consider myself bicultural, bilingual. Of course, I have some accent and stuff like that, but so I do miss Japan. I do miss certain things about Japanese culture, especially the food. You know, everybody, if you ever get a chance to go to Japan, food is great. So I miss food. I miss, you know, definitely seeing my family and some friends from high school. And but at the same time, like culturally speaking, there's so many things. Like Japan and US are so different cultures, two different cultures, that when I miss certain things about Japan, because, you know, Japan does it better, or, you know, this is better in Japan. Complete flip side, the exact same amount of things are like, I feel like better in the US, you know? So I think that's where I'm able to see objectively at this stage of my life that, you know, I don't just miss Japan and like, oh, I wish I was in Japan. I wish Japan. Like, because if I lived in Japan, I'm sure there's so many things about the US that I would miss because it's such a different, you know, two very different cultures. But mainly, yes, I miss seeing my family, friends, you know, food, restaurants, just like walking on the street in Tokyo, just like nostalgia. But my family and I, we do video chat a lot. And then now I have a son who just turned 6, so they want to see him. So we do that together. And then because of COVID and the pandemic, I don't know when we can travel to Japan. I was hoping maybe this summer, but that's not happening. So hopefully next summer to see how things are, right? After a year and a half or 2 years, I really, really miss being in Japan and being there physically. So I really would like to ideally go every other year to visit my family in Japan. And I wish they come here more, you know, but my parents are in their mid to late 70s and they're older, you know.
Over there. So you go there. So if you was balling out, you would have a direct flight jet and go there every year if you could, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. And then I have certain amount of Japanese friends here. You know, we definitely, you know, we all need friends from our culture as much as we're, you know, each one of us is very integrated and lead different lives. My Japanese friends here, and we're good friends. And you know, now with COVID, you know, we have virtual girls' nights or virtual chats or just texting each other or. So I do have certain amount of Japanese friends here that I feel, you know, connected to, and they're all here. They're all locally. And some moved to Florida, or some moved to Texas, or So and then my son is actually going into Japanese bilingual education. Like basically, my son is starting first grade next week, but he got into the Japanese immersion program at Fairfax County Public Schools. He's going to the one in Reston Herndon called Fox Mill, but he got in the lottery for that. So
you can stay connected with you. So you can do that together with your son.
Exactly. So the teachers and the PTA, it's very connected to Japan. So you know, he and I will get to be part of that because I've really been bad about teaching my son Japanese myself. So
there you go.
So you know, just like community here that I can seek out. Luckily, it's a metropolitan area, DC. You know, so there are you know, enough Japanese people that I could feel connected to my culture. So, but you know, I would love to visit anytime I can. Anytime it's safe to visit, I want to visit again. So.
All right. So what's your question for me?
Okay. Oh gosh, you didn't tell me this was coming. Just kidding. So this might not so exciting question, but when and like how, like what made you start your own podcast?
That's like good. Like I feel like I gotten used to that. That's like my interview question. I've answered it like so many times, but but I'll tell the story again because this might be someone's first time listening, right? So I do a lot of ideas. I get bored easily, surprise. And so I used to do when I worked at a job previously before this job at Mason, I used to like try to get myself motivated. And so I would try to talk out loud to get myself motivated. So I said, okay, let me do a YouTube series on YouTube called The Random Ramblings of Phil. And I would set my phone up in my car. And right before I got into the work, I would just, you know, record myself talking video wise and saying like, you know, this is the day, chase it, motivational Monday, like really trying to, it's basically me speaking into existence, like me hyping myself up for work. But then I realized like, wow, like this is the most boring video ever. I'm just sitting in my car. Like no one wants to just watch a YouTube video of me sitting in my car. So I asked my friend, I say, I heard about this thing called podcast. You know, I'm only talking. I don't think I need a video. I want to just do audio. How do I have a radio show or podcast? And my boy, Sam Nang, he said, my boy does it. He's really good at it. His name is Dean Picari. Shout out to him. And he's like, yo, just give him a call. And I gave him a call. And Dean, he didn't know me, but he, you know, his friend Sam Nang was good. And we talked for like an hour. And he's like, you got to do this. You got to do this. I'll send you this. And he did it, and I laid it out, and I was like, all right, bet I'm gonna start a podcast because I was gonna talk about the same thing, motivation and all that stuff, but I don't have to be I can do it on my phone and use the audio and then share it that way. And then I realized that me starting a podcast, one, I had cold feet. I recorded my first episode in December, and I didn't release it till April because I thought it was gonna be stupid. So I kept on re-recording it and retrying it. And so I remember one of my first episodes, I did one by myself, the first one. And I said, Hillard, I got this radio show. I'm really nervous. Can you just do it with me? Like be my co-host. And he joined me and we did an interview. And then I realized that, like, instead of doing that solo show that I was doing where I just talk to myself, I just wanted to interview people. And so I changed my mind and I turned this podcast and just interview people. And I realized that, like, I already had a network where I could just ask people questions, and that was it. It was easy. So that's kind of how it started. So it was like literally just me wanting to motivate myself and talk and use my voice. And I also know that my mom, you know, me not my mom, but I know that that corny dad joke, I got a face for radio. So like no one wants to see me. No one wants to see my face. They just want to hear it. So I did that. So I think, and then it's funny because that email, that all the tips that Dean taught me, I have it ready as an email template. And so whenever someone says like, hey, I heard that you got a podcast, can you help me start? I just copy and paste it and send them, because I was like, anyone can, if I can start it, you can do it too. So I literally
there's a technology part, right? Like I was telling you in the beginning,
I mean, like I said, I'm not super technologically sound. I just looked at a lot of YouTube. I looked at a lot of YouTube videos and asked a lot of questions, or I joined podcast Facebook groups, and I was like, I don't know how to do this, and asked the Facebook group, and all these people would give me answers. So it's like literally, I got a long way to go. There's people that got like way more professional podcasts and whole studio setups and stuff.
Yeah.
It's gotten better. I've noticed.
Well, you have that little studio with the curtain there.
Yeah. But that's 3 years. So it took me 3 years to figure that out. But yeah, I think I started a long time ago just because I wanted to talk and share something.
Yeah, and you're great at it. So when did you start it?
3 years ago, April 2nd, 2017.
Okay.
I put that in because I got like an anniversary or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So April. So
you had your 3-year anniversary during the pandemic.
Yeah, during the pandemic, had a 3 year, and in which during that I wanted to have like this in-person party during my 3 year, but obviously that didn't happen. So
4 years.
4 years.
And then 5 years will be a huge party.
Yeah. So it is what it is. So this is great. We only tipped the iceberg. We might have to do a part 2. Like,
definitely.
Because we only talked about how you got to college. We didn't talk about really dive into the transition. So we got way more to tip on.
Oh yeah, and just like you, I like to talk too. So
yeah. So this is the part of the show called Shoutouts and Plugs. Show love and shout out anyone you want to show love to. Shoutouts and plugs, and then plugs where anyone can find you if you're comfortable, where they can find you to follow up with you and learn about, you know, I don't know, what you do or whatever professionally. So I'll keep my mouth shut. Stage is set. Shout outs and plugs.
Okay. So shout outs, definitely my family back in Japan. We're really close to each other, and you know, my parents are so supportive. They really supported me every step of the way. You know, and kind of connecting to this episode, my mom and my older brother are really like, yeah, you should go, you know, like, you know, go from the undergrad level, you know, you should go, you know, like, that's exciting, do it. And then my dad, he's a little bit of a worrywart, and he really was worried. You know, he tried to, you know, say, maybe I should go to college in Japan, stay in Tokyo, and maybe I can be an exchange student for 1 year and see if I really like it. And then immediately he was like, well, you know, US have guns. You know, like, you know, it's fact, you know, it's a fact, you know, it's not as safe as Japan. Japan is known to be what Japan is. So I know that he was, you know, he really was worried, but, you know, he supported me, and, you know, my parents still to date, support me and my siblings, you know, whatever we're, you know, interested in. They're not the kind of parents who, you know, say like, I said this, so you do this, you know, they're like, well, you know, I think this and I think this, but if you're really interested in it, you know, try it. And they really try their best to support our dreams and our interests, pursue our interests. So, and same thing with, you know, my son Akira. You know, I try to be that type of parent, you know, whatever interest you have, you know, it's best if you pursue your interest and dreams, you know, because you're going to be best at it because you have passion for it. So I miss my family, but, you know, huge shout out to them because I would not be here today without them for sure. And just like Phil, I'm a very social person. So I love, you know, connecting with others, meeting new people, and just my connections and staying in touch and the with my friends, including my friends at work. So my colleagues are my friends at Mason Career Services. So the friendship really, keeps me going and put a big smile on my face. So shout out to all my friends, some still back in Japan, and, many who are now here, because I've been here longer, now than Japan, total years of my life. I've been in the US longer officially as of like last year. So last year, or something like that. So, and then I think Phil, and I talked about this, but I think we're both really fortunate because I really think, Mason Career Service is a great place to work. I love my coworkers, they're my work friends, so I definitely have friendship with them. And it's a great culture, office culture to work in. So I'm fortunate that I'm doing something I love and be able to do it in a very collaborative, team-oriented environment. And then now, I'm part of the anti-racism learning group, and it just really motivates me to have people so motivated and passionate about, many things that they're pursuing, and I learn from them every day myself. So shout out to, my family, my friends, and my coworkers who are also my friends, many of them. So
And they can find you, if people want to connect with you, where can they connect with you?
So since I work in career services, I definitely need to be more active on LinkedIn myself. Phil knows that I am not really, I'm so social. I'm really social. I'm very extroverted, if you can't tell, but I'm not a social media person. And maybe it's the technology part. I don't know. Because I can't post on Facebook, no problem. But if I'm spending 5 minutes posting something on Facebook, I would rather be doing something using that 5 minutes and exploring, gaining new experiences. If I'm, instead of posting something for 10 minutes, I'd rather be doing something, new.
I don't know why it's taking you 10 minutes. I'm about to have to help you with the speed. So obviously connect on LinkedIn, which is a really good professional website.
Yes, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn.
That's good.
Professionally, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And
there you go. Well, this has been a great episode, Satoko, and we're going to definitely have you on again. Listeners, please share this with your family and friends. It's Positive Philter, positive, and then filter spelled with a PH. If you want to leave a voicemail for the podcast, it's 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Spreading positivity is a movement. Please continue to be kind and treat everyone like you want to be treated. And we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity a Movement. Thanks for listening.